Please subscribe to the channel and stay with me. This story only reveals its truth if you listen until the very end. My daughter stopped answering my calls 3 days after she went to my in-laws' house for the holidays. At first, I told myself I was overreacting. Amelia was 19, old enough to want space, old enough to forget her phone in a jacket pocket, old enough to choose silence over explanation. Still, every unanswered call scraped something raw inside me. By the 4th day, the December rain in northern France had soaked the streets of Lyon into a gray blur, and my unease had hardened into dread. My wife, Claire, insisted everything was fine. "They adore her," she said, folding laundry with mechanical calm. "You're projecting again." Projecting. That word had followed me all my life, usually spoken by people who had never been taught to fear polite smiles. I grew up in foster homes after my mother died and my father vanished. Silence, I learned early, was never neutral. It was either punishment or preparation. When Amelia finally texted, "I'm busy. Stop calling," my hands shook. The message didn't sound like her. No emoji, no warmth, no mistake-filled rush of words she always sent. I drove to my in-laws' estate the next morning. The house sat outside Annecy, overlooking a lake that looked peaceful enough to lie. The mountains were sharp with snow, the air clean and cold, as if nothing bad could survive there. The house itself was old money. Stone walls, iron gates, a lineage that believed blood was destiny. Claire's parents, Etienne and Margot Beaumont, had never forgiven me for being born without a last name worth inheriting. They welcomed me with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "Amelia is resting," Margot said. "She's been emotional." "I'd like to see her," I replied. Etienne's hand tightened on his cane. "That won't be necessary." That was the moment my fear crystallized into certainty. Over dinner, they spoke of plans, boarding schools in Switzerland, internships arranged through proper channels, opportunities that required distance. When I asked Amelia's opinion, they answered for her. "She's confused," Margot said. "Teenage sentimentality. We're helping her see clearly." Claire sat beside them, silent. I realized then that this wasn't a visit. It was an extraction. That night, I slept in the guest room, listening to the house breathe, pipes clicking, floorboards whispering like conspirators. Around midnight, I heard crying. Soft, muffled, I followed the sound to a locked door. "Amelia," I whispered. The crying stopped. The next morning, my car wouldn't start. They told me a mechanic would come, eventually. They suggested I take the train back to Lyon. Alone, I refused. By the 3rd day, I understood the truth. They were erasing me from my daughter's life, the way they had always wanted to. Slowly, respectably, with paperwork and concern, and the quiet confidence of people used to winning without witnesses. So I called someone I hadn't spoken to in 20 years. Luc Moreau answered on the 2nd ring. Luc and I had grown up together in foster care. Where I learned silence, he learned observation. He now worked in private investigations, corporate, legal, discreet. "I need help," I said. 2 days later, Luc arrived as a consultant Etienne himself had hired years ago. The Beaumonts trusted resumes more than people. What Luc uncovered made my stomach turn. They were filing for temporary guardianship, citing my unstable background and Claire's emotional fragility. They had a therapist on retainer willing to testify that Amelia was better off under their guidance. They were already drafting contracts for her future, one that didn't include me. And Claire knew. The betrayal cut deeper than any insult ever had. I wanted to storm the house, scream, tear the truth into the open. But Luc stopped me. "Slow," he said. "They're experts at slow." So I learned their language. I documented everything. Missed calls, altered messages, recorded conversations. Luc traced financial pressure points, undeclared assets, offshore accounts, a charity that existed mostly on paper. The Beaumonts weren't criminals. They were worse. They were careless because they believed themselves untouchable. Winter deepened. Snow fell heavy and silent, burying roads and intentions alike. One night, Luc disabled the security system for exactly 7 minutes. I reached Amelia's room. She looked thinner, older. Her eyes filled when she saw me, but she didn't run to me. She hesitated. "They said you didn't want me anymore," she whispered. Something inside me broke cleanly, like ice splitting underfoot. "I've never wanted anything more," I said. I showed her the recordings, the documents, the plans made without her. She listened without crying. When I finished, she hugged me with a fierceness that felt like survival. The confrontation came days later, in the Beaumont's grand salon, sunlight spilling across antique rugs like a blessing they didn't deserve. Luke, a lawyer, and a social services representative sat with us. I laid everything on the table. The recordings played, the financial records surfaced. The guardianship petition collapsed under scrutiny. Margot cried, not out of remorse, but outrage. Etienne went very still. Claire tried to explain, to justify, to claim fear. I looked at her and felt nothing. In the end, the Beaumont name shielded them from prison, but not from exposure. The charity was dissolved, the accounts audited, their influence withered quietly, the way rot does when sunlight finally reaches it. Emilia chose to come home with me. Spring came late that year. The lake thawed, the mountains softened. Life resumed its careful rhythm. One evening, Emilia asked me why I hadn't fought louder at first. I thought of my childhood, of doors closing softly, of losses no one announced. Because real power, I told her, is knowing when silence is patience and when it's a weapon. She nodded, older than her years, and as the sun dipped behind the Alps, I understood something I'd waited my whole life to learn. They had tried to take my daughter from me. Instead, they taught me exactly how far I was willing to go to keep her, and how quietly devastating I could be when pushed.